How common is it for people with borderline personality disorder to have had narcissistic parents? Well, it's pretty darn common. Let's say it this way. Every single person who has or at one time has had borderline personality disorder or any emotional disorder, that person's parents do have an emotional disorder themselves. Now, is it narcissism in every case? No. But here's something to keep in mind. All emotional disorders have the same fundamental cause. They all have the exact same cause, and they all have the exact same solutions. The exact same underlying problem, the exact same thing that needs to be done in order to fix that problem. So you say, well, how can that be? How do people end up with different emotional disorders then? So my father, for example, I recognize that he has what is most likely narcissistic personality disorder, and I ended up with borderline personality disorder. Why? The answer is so simple it'll make your head spin. Because of individuality. What do I mean by because of individuality? What I mean is the unique personality type that is inherent to you and that you were born with. That is the only thing that separates me from having borderline personality disorder and my father from having narcissistic personality disorder. You remember what I said about emotional disorders? They all have the same fundamental cause. The same thing is at the foundation of all of them. So how does the unique individual personality type that is inherent to you, that you're born with, explain me ended up with one and you ended up with another and your parents ended up with another? Because your personality type, your natural personality type, determines your way of handling a thing. It determines your way of looking at a problem and coming up with the best ways to deal with it. So what is at the root of emotional disorders? Improper and unhealthy understanding of feelings, self, and life, as well as a completely erroneous understanding of how worth works, of how value works. Unhealthy people aren't aware that there are two different distinct types. There's the commercial type and there's the inherent type. Problems arise when you apply the commercial type of value system to people, and unhealthy people do that. So my father lives with completely erroneous concepts, distorted ideas about feelings, the nature of feelings, not just his feelings, but mine as well, and everybody's feelings in general. He lives with a distorted concept about the nature of self. In other words, what it means to be a person, not just for his own self, but for all selves. So when he looks out at the world, he has a distorted concept of what it means to be a person. And then life kind of covers the rest. But the one thing that I've started to include in here that I never included early on in my work is this whole thing about worth. My father lives with completely distorted and unhealthy and false notion about worth, how it works, where it's born, the nature of it. He's applying a commercial idea of value, that whole value system that applies to commercial things, to people. He applied it to me as a child when I was growing up. Now, we go back to his parents, my grandparents. They lived with the exact same false ideas and unhealthy attitudes. My father, being raised by that, he was getting those same messages. It's interesting that a teacher can't teach you, he can't teach you how to understand something in a way that he doesn't understand it himself. So my father, in that situation with my grandparents, experiences that same inner struggle and pain, trying to figure out how to cope with these hurtful, false attitudes and notions about feeling, self, life, value, worth. And because of his personality type, he says, well, and he's not sitting at a white erase board, like mapping this all out or anything. This is all happening unconsciously when we're children. But his personality type said, the way to handle this is this and this and this. And he ended up then with narcissistic personality disorder. And then he grew up, and he had me. And he passed on those same unhealthy attitudes and messages to me about feeling, self, life, value. And when I experienced those same conflicting, painful messages and attitudes because of my natural personality type, the one that's just inherent to me, the one I'm born with, I said, unconsciously, the best way to handle this is such and such and such. Those are the coping strategies that I settled on, which ended up being the borderline personality disorder that we talk so much about. But it's all the same. That is the only thing that distinguishes one emotional disorder from another emotional disorder. Your inherent natural personality type that you're simply born with. I tell a story about, I got a cousin named Sherman. He come out to the house. They all come out to the house when they were kids, and we took a walk down the road, and we come to a horse out in a field. I didn't know that horse. I didn't know the farmer. I knew of the horse. I knew of the farmer, but had no experience with them, did not know them personally, on a personal basis or anything like that. But we were about 10 years old, 11 years old, and I remember we got down there. My cousin Sherman's always been like this, jump first, ask questions later. He just goes. He just does it, and his personality type is like, I'll figure it out. And he'll just jump right into a thing. That's not my personality type. It's never been. I wasn't born that way. And, it's interesting. I could fake it. Like, I could spend a lifetime imitating my cousin Sherman. But for the rest of my life and until I died, no matter how well I imitated, it's not natural to me, is it? The best I can ever hope for is to imitate that personality type, but not actually possess it myself. My natural personality type, the one I was born with, is the one it's inherent to me. I'll have it for my whole life. And it's interesting, the same happens with dogs. If you want a good service dog, for example, do you know they can't just use any dog? They can't just use any dog as a service dog. Why not? Is it because of the failure of the trainer? Is it some reflection on the trainer's poor skills or something? No, it's that the dog is born just like you and me with an inherent natural personality type. It's just something you're born with, and that is inherent to you. And so there are some dogs, their natural inherent personality type is just not the type of personality that is ideal to make for a really fantastic service dog. Isn't that interesting? So that's the same thing I'm talking about here. So we get down to the field there, and my cousin Sherman sees that horse. He says, I'm going to ride that horse. And I said, are you out of your mind? It was a big horse. And here we are, only 10, 11 years old. I said, that horse will kill you. I don't know that horse. I don't know what it'll do or anything like that. Don't know the farmer. He says, I'm going to ride it anyway. And he calls that horse over. It gets up next to the fence, and he climbs that fence and just leaps onto the horse's back. That horse takes off, trying to buck him, running like the wind. Disappears, goes running off toward the horizon. There was a hill, and then there were some trees, and it disappeared into the forest there, into those trees, over the hill, and then here comes Sherman about 10 minutes later, walking back on foot. He got throwed by that horse, and he said, boy, that was great. I love that horse, and he just had the greatest time. It's fascinating to me, the differences in our natural personality types, and I admire that about my cousin Sherman. There are times where I wish I had more of that personality type in me, but I simply don't, and I never will. But the reason why I tell the Sherman story is if you think about Sherman and I, looking at the same problem and coming to our own conclusions about the best way to handle that problem. Is he going to come to the same conclusions I do? Not at all, is he? Why not? Because his personality type is more like, let's just jump into this. I will figure it out along the way, right? That's his solution. That's his natural way of handling the thing. Natural way of approaching and looking at the thing. Not mine. Not mine. I'm more of let me sit here and study this for a while. I want to understand it from all sides, and then we can start talking about what to do about it.